Oh, I got two people in the waiting room here. Oh, there's Karen from Tripeppi Smith and Jason. Okay, and it does show we are live.
All right. Do you want to wait for the two people that you were going to let in the room, or go ahead?
They're in.
They're in.
Everybody's in.
Okay, great. Okay, I will call the Clean Energy Alliance Board of Directors meeting to order. It's April 22nd, 2021 at 2 p.m. and we are virtually in the city of Del Mar. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Certainly. Alternate member Warden.
Here.
Alternate member Acosta.
Here.
And Chair Becker.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, now we will have the flag salute, and we'll wait till the flag is on our screen, and we will be led by Board Member Warden.
All right, we're looking for the flag.
Yes. I think we're having some difficulties, so here we go.
There it is.
Great.
All right, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good, thank you. All right, board member comments and announcements. All right, I can't see if anyone's hand's up because the flag's still there, but I would like to go ahead and make some comments. Should I wait till the flag is gone, or?
Sorry.
There we go. Okay, so I do want to make some comments. I just wanted to take a moment to recognize two of our fabulous team members, Barbara Boswell and Jason Haber. Both of them went above and beyond the call of duty by waiting, I think, approximately 12 hours to speak on behalf of the Clean Energy Alliance at the April 6th Board of Supervisors meeting. I do think that made a difference, and I'm really appreciative. So I just wanted to call that out and thank them. Thank you. All right, presentations.
Chair Becker?
Yes.
Hi, I didn't know if you saw my hand up.
I did not. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to also commend the CEA staff, and in particular Barb Boswell. I've attended 2 community outreach meetings last week with Carlsbad residents to talk about CEA and what's coming. And I thought the interaction and the dialogue was fabulous. So I wanted to commend CEA for that. And also yesterday, the Green Business Expo at the Carlsbad Flower Fields, CEA had a booth there, and it was an excellent opportunity to interact with the public. So I just wanted to put that out there and say that CEA really is doing great outreach.
Thank you for that. Yes, and that great outreach is also supplemented by our wonderful Tripeppi Smith team members as well. They're doing a fabulous job with their outreach, so thank you for that too. All right, okay. I don't think we have any presentations today, but we do have a public comment. Could we call that person?
Okay, this email was received this afternoon. It's dear members of the Clean Energy Alliance Board. I'm a longtime resident of Carlsbad and have been a huge proponent of community choice energy. I am making public comment today to express my disappointment with the rollout of the CEA and the rate and generation choices available under the CEA effective May 1st, 2021. I attended many forums and provided public comment at one of the first meetings of the CEA. At that meeting, I urged the board members to ensure those of us on net metering could remain and would receive close to market rate for the clean energy we produce from our rooftop solar. In addition, at the forums, we discussed the possibility of residents with rooftop solar could receive market rates for energy produced, but would also not need to be trapped in a time of use system. Currently, the CEA is doing nothing to entice ratepayers like me to move into the CEA by providing a 0.06 per kilowatt hour for the excess clean energy I produce. If I were to move into the CEA now, I would break my contract with SDG&E and lose grandfathering status over the next 14 years. I had to ask myself, for what? I am also a local school board member in Carlsbad, and we also asked early on in the process that the CEA meet with the school districts to discuss a school-only rate and ways to work together to utilize the clean energy the districts produce during the summers and other holiday times if they had solar panels on their facilities. We were hopeful at that time, but my understanding is that those meetings did not take place and no communications have occurred around what the rates will be for school districts and what timelines are to avoid penalties for the school districts if they are not satisfied with the CEA rate system. It is really unfortunate that the CEA did not take advantage of the opportunity to collaborate with the local districts to try and find some win-win solutions. So long as I have net metering contract with SDG&E, it doesn't seem worth the move for me as an individual. It also appears that the school districts will need to do a quick analysis to see if it is a tangible option as well. I hope that the CEA will reconsider its rating system and really provide ratepayers with a true alternative with added value instead of putting new labels on the same SDG&E system. Thank you for your service. Sincerely submitted, Kathy Rawlings.
Thank you for that comment. And I just want to ask, maybe it's possible, Madam CEO, that we could actually meet with Kathy Rollins from the, at least to clarify some of her questions and maybe even as a school district. Maybe that's two separate meetings, but hopefully that would be possible.
Thank you, Chair Becker. Yes, we do. I'd like to make a couple of comments if you are okay with that with regards to the issues that the customer brought up. We do intend to meet with the school district. The Carlsbad Unified School District enrolls in June. And so we are working on setting up a meeting prior to that to discuss their accounts and answer questions and do any type of cost comparisons they would like. We do set our rates and rate schedules to mirror the schedules currently offered by SDG&E and SDG's time of use periods in order to make it easy for customers to compare being enrolled in CEA versus SDG&E during this enrollment period. If we had rate schedules that varied differently from SDG&E, it would make it very difficult for customers to understand what it means to enroll and what the impact would be. With regards to the net energy metering program, our program does mirror that of SDG&E. Customers do not lose their grandfathering status with regards to their NEM program. They keep that when they're enrolled with Clean Energy Alliance. And we are sending out a letter. The letters begin going out next week to net energy metering customers, the majority of which are enrolling in the month of June. And the letter will walk through the net energy program through Clean Energy Alliance and explain how our process works. So that the customers will remain on the rate that they're on with SDG&E. They receive the credits from their system at the time the system is generating electricity. The credit is based on the rate in effect. They'd be receiving credits from CEA at CEA's rates, and also they would be incurring charges for energy used based on CEA's rates in effect as well. And then those are netted out at the end of each month, and then a true up at the end of the year. So it does mirror SDG&E's program. And again, that's to help with ease of comparability and for those customers to understand truly how it will work under Clean Energy Alliance. We do plan to meet with the school district, and I'll be happy to reach out to this customer and set up a meeting as well.
Great, thank you for that. And also, will that letter, could that be emailed to all of the board members so that they could feel free to respond as well?
Yes, I sure will.
Thank you for that. Okay, so we are on to approval of the minutes. Could I get a motion for approval?
I'll move approval of the minutes.
All right, I'll second. And could we call for the vote?
Alternate member Warden,
Yes.
alternate member Acosta,
Yes.
and Chair Becker.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. That brings us to the consent calendar. We have one item on the consent calendar, the treasurer's report. I would entertain a motion for approval of the consent calendar.
I'll move
moved.
approval of the consent calendar.
All right.
I can second.
All right, great. Call for the vote.
Alternate member Warden,
Yes.
alternate member Acosta,
Yes, sorry.
and
Guess
Chair
I didn't
Becker.
unmute.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to new business. Item 2, the operational, administrative, and regulatory affairs update. And I'll turn that over to our CEO.
Thank you, Chair Becker. I will open with an update, and then I'm going to pass it over to our regulatory counsel, Ty Todstall from Todstall APC, to provide his update. And I will share my screen here. And if it's true to form, I will have to start and stop. Yep. Okay, one moment. Okay. So the item before you is to receive and file both the operational administrative update report as well as the regulatory affairs report from our regulatory counsel. I'd like to provide an update to the board with regards to noticing with our launch beginning in May. And our program is launching while we're in one phase. It does go over the 2 months of May and June. The majority of the customers will be enrolling in May, including all of the existing Solana Energy Alliance customers. And the remaining customers in June will be net energy metering customers, with the exception of those net energy metering customers whose relevant period ends in May. So if you're a net energy metering customer and you settle up with SDG&E in May, then you would enroll with Clean Energy Alliance in May. If for all other net energy metering customers, they're enrolled in the month of June. So we have begun our noticing, and our notices are broken up into 2 groups. The first is the May enrollment. The May enrollment were non-Solana Energy Alliance customers for notice number 1, which went out in March. So those went out to the Carlsbad and Del Mar customers. And the reason they didn't go to Solana Energy Alliance is those notices are for customers, specifically for customers that are leaving SDG&E and going into a new CCA. And Solana Energy Alliance customers had received those initial notices when they originally enrolled back in 2018. Solana Energy Alliance did receive a specific notice related to their transition from SEA to CEA in the beginning of April, and that was their second notice. They had received their first notice in November because we needed to give them 6 months notice. For the customers enrolling in June, their first notice also went out the beginning of April, and the second notice will go out the beginning of May. For the majority of our customers that are enrolling in May, the second notice went out over the course of 2 days because of the volume. They went out on April the 12th and April the 14th. And then, as mentioned, we will be sending out letters specifically to net energy metering customers. The first approximately 600 will be going out early next week to those net energy metering customers that are enrolling in May. And then the subsequent remaining net energy metering customers will go out in the following week. With regards to our call center activity, so we have statistics through April the 18th, and we have received a total of 546 calls. 234 calls were received during the week of April 12th to the 18th. So that second notice really did drive up a lot of activity calling into the call center. When customers first call in, they receive our interactive voice response system, and those customers can either self-serve through the interactive voice response system or request to speak to an agent. And by far the majority are asking to flow through to an agent and speak to a live customer agent. 530 of the 546 have spoken with an agent. The average time to answer the calls is around 11 seconds, so they are being answered quite quickly once they're when they're called in.
Do you have a general idea of the questions? Is it around solar? Is it around, or do they not break those out?
I don't have that data, but I will specifically reach out and ask to find out if they can summarize by general topic what seems to be the questions.
Okay.
I do have more specific data on the opt-outs, the majority of which are actually being done through our voice response system. To date, we've had 779 opt-outs, which is results in a participation rate of 98.6%. So a 1.4% opt-out, which is a relatively low opt-out at this point of our implementation process. The majority of the customers who are opting out, we do ask customers to what their reason is for opting out. And the majority are stating that they're opting out because they don't like being automatically enrolled. We have some that have also indicated a concern about rates and costs, and then others that are declined. The third highest reason is they decline to respond or to answer. And we've had 18 opt-ups. So 18 of our customers went through the process to opt up to our Green Impact 100% renewable. I'm going to stop here because I do see one of the board members has a question. Sure.
Yes, let's go to Board Member Warden.
Thank you. My question is, do you see any kind of a trend in those 779 opt-outs? Do they tend to be residential customers or business customers or some of each?
They are almost all residential customers.
Okay, I guess that's good news. And I would just note as a comment, I went through the process to opt up and I found it pretty easy to use, and the people on the phone were very helpful. So I was pleasantly informed by it.
Great. And we've had no opt-downs to our Clean Impact product.
Are those buttons available on the website? Remember, we were going to put those on the website, the opt-out? Yeah, okay.
Yes. A couple of items that we've seen in questions and concerns we've seen in social media that I'd like to take a moment to address have to do with discount programs. So there's been concern expressed about whether or not customers maintain their discount programs that they currently have with San Diego Gas and Electric. And I'm happy to say that those programs do continue for Clean Energy Alliance customers. Customers do not have to reapply. They don't have to do anything special to continue those programs. And if there are any customers out there who think that this might be a program that they could qualify for, I would highly recommend they go to SDG&E's website and search for those programs and put in an application, because they are available to Clean Energy Alliance customers, but they do need to apply through SDG&E. The next most common area of concern we see is revolves around net energy metering, and that our letter that from our public comment today speaks to that. Customers with solar on their rooftop are enrolled in SDG&E's net energy metering program. And those customers really tend to be very in tune to their energy usage. They've made an investment in their solar system, and managing that helps them to recover those costs. Clean Energy Alliance does offer a net energy metering program. It's the Personal Impact Program. Net energy metering customers who are enrolled in CEA are automatically enrolled in our Personal Impact Program. So those customers do not have to do take any action to be enrolled in our program. As mentioned earlier, our net energy metering program does mirror SDG&E's program. Customers maintain their grandfathered status, whether it's NEM 1.0 or the current NEM 2.0. Those statuses remain. You also remain on your same rate schedule you are on with SDG&E. We have developed the rate schedules that mirror their time of use periods and definitions of hours that are peak, off-peak, and super off-peak. The account is trued up with SDG&E when enrollment with CEA takes place. So as I mentioned, all of the, with the exception of the accounts that normally true up or settle their account with SDG in May, all others will be enrolled with CEA in June. And the reason that they're all being enrolled in June is because if they were to enroll in July or later, they would be placed into the 2021 Power Charge Indifference Adjustment vintage, or PCIA vintage, which is a higher rate with that SDG&E charges. And we felt that that higher rate, we didn't want customers enrolled in that vintage with that higher per kilowatt hour rate. And so we did decide to go ahead and enroll the net energy metering customers in June. But that does trigger a true up because SDG&E will no longer be managing the program for the generation side of the bill. And so those customers, I recommend taking a look at where you are with your account and take a look at, you know, if settling the account truing up in June has an adverse effect on you with regards to whether or not you owe money to SDG&E, you may want to take a look at whether it's advantageous to you to opt out now and enroll later, or evaluate your options. CEA, a great benefit to NEM customers is that CEA offers a higher net surplus compensation for those customers who have systems that over the course of the 12-month relevant period generates more energy than they use. The highest rate that SDG&E paid last year was about 4.5 cents per kilowatt hour. Our rate is about 30% higher. But SDG&E also had some months where their payout was about 1.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So in those instances, we're significantly higher. So it's something that those customers really need to kind of weigh out those benefits. And we do have letters going out to NEM customers. And Chair Becker, to your request, I'll make sure that the board receives copies of those letters. So I'm going to stop sharing this and pass the baton over to our General Counsel Tosdahl and share his presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Boswell. Appreciate it. I have a few updates for the board this afternoon. And while Ms. Boswell is pulling up the presentation, I'll introduce the first item that I want to discuss. And there are really two different components to it, both of which concern the PCIA or Power Charge Indifference Adjustment that we were just discussing. As you know, the PCIA is the exit fee that all CCA program customers are required to pay. And it's been the subject of a proceeding at the Public Utilities Commission for all over 3 years now, a PCIA proceeding. And there have been a number of changes to the PCIA formula. We're now in a phase of a later stage of that proceeding where the Public Utilities Commission has been trying to determine whether whether the utilities, the investor-owned utilities, including SDG&E, should be required to make resources in their portfolio available for purchase or some other type of use by CCA programs. With the logic being that the CCA customers have to pay for those the above market cost of those programs, and so they should be entitled to retain at least some benefits from them. That's what the law says, the Public Utilities Code on this subject. So That's been our trade organization, the Cal CCA, has been working very closely with Southern California Edison, interestingly enough. And over about a year and a half ago, they proposed they formed a working group called Working Group 3, and they proposed a allocation process that would permit CCA programs to obtain allocations of power from the IOU portfolio. These steps would not require, would not actually reduce the PCIA, but they would reduce the costs of the CCA program in the sense that the power that's procured could be put to use and would be available at a reduced cost than they already pay for some of those resources. So there would be cost implications. Unfortunately, that proposal, the Working Group 3 proposal, the allocation proposal, has been sitting on the desk of the Public Utilities Commission for over a year now. And there was no action. In the meantime, the CCA programs not being satisfied with this proposed a bill, Senate Bill 612. And so Senate Bill 612 mirrors in many ways the proceeding that I was just discussing and the proposal in Working Group 3. So it would require investor-owned utilities to offer an allocation of each power product in the utility portfolio. So essentially a slice of the entire portfolio. And that would include RPS resources, resource adequacy resources, and GHG-free resources. They propose a mechanism to make sure they include what we refer to as long-term RPS resources, which are required by the Public Utilities Commission. And there were some options that were available to CCA programs under this bill. To the extent that the resources are not allocated, they are then offered for sale. And there's a very predictable pricing associated with these resources. There's a market price benchmark that's calculated every year for the PCIA, and it can be used as a predictable price. So the bill really advances many important components of the original proposal. It is currently, it has many sponsors, many supporters. It is currently going through the hearing process. And my understanding is that there's a hearing on this next week. Keep you updated about the progress of the bill. I think, interestingly enough, Ms. Boswell, if you'd advance to the next slide. Interestingly enough, when this bill was proposed and started advancing, the Public Utilities Commission came out with a decision after all these months on the proposal. And so the proposed decision, it lifts a PCIA cap and this is a step that we had agreed to some time ago. And it approves a modified version of the proposal that just applies to RPS resources. So under the commission's version of this allocation process, there would not be the opportunity for CCA programs to obtain the resource adequacy or GHG-free resources in the utility portfolio, just RPS. So it's a very important difference between the two proposals. Now that wouldn't, if this is adopted, it would not preclude the CCA programs and the utilities from entering into a negotiation and for resources like CEA has done in the past. But that type of negotiation depends on the interest and willingness of the utility to do so. This process would actually require the utility to offer up these allocations and all the energy attributes associated with them to the CCA program. So it's a long-awaited decision. What it appears is that the commission was highly motivated by the legislation being introduced and advancing. I think that's a fair conclusion, given that we haven't seen any action on this proposal for over a year. But that is where things stand with this PCIA measure. And so before I move on, happy to take any questions about that. I know that that was, is a little bit of a mouthful, so happy to answer any questions that people have about that before I move on to other subjects. I will mention that the proposed decision is up for a vote in early May. And so by that time, by the time of our next board meeting, we'll have more information, hopefully both about the outcome of the commission's action and then more information about the status of the bill.
Thank you for that. Board Member Warden?
Thank you. Yeah, Ty, to make sure I get this in concept, these departure charges, the PCIA, are used to buy power, but we don't get any of that back.
That's
Now
right.
Start getting some of it back. It should reduce our power purchase costs. Do you have any rough estimate if the CPUC decision were finalized or SB 612? What would that do to our rates? How would our rates change?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Borden. I don't have a good sense in the abstract of how our rates might be impacted. That would require, a somewhat detailed analysis once these are passed to determine, the boundaries around that. We would have to run some different scenarios to figure out how much power the program is interested in buying, and then what those costs would be, and relative to the cost that we have now priced in for procurement. So there would need to be some additional steps taken to actually determine the rate impact, and there would have to be some decisions made by you all in terms of the allocation process. Before we would actually, have I think a concrete idea. We could definitely look at different scenarios though, when these things get passed. Once we know what the structure of these things is going to be and what our options are, to inform the board a bit more about the consequences of allocation decision.
Thanks. I don't want you to speculate, and maybe we'll just hold on to that thought as the parts are still moving. And when they stop moving, I think then it would be worth figuring out what the impact or what the options are to us and the impacts of the choices we make.
Absolutely. When this bill is either passed or stalled or fails, we'll report back. And when the decision comes out, we'll do the same, and then we'll have a much better idea about what the options are, and we can start putting some meat on the bones there, so to speak.
All right, thanks for that.
Do we have lobbyists on our behalf talking to the important people for the SB 612?
Cal CCA has a lobbyist that they use who's been engaged on SB 612, is my understanding. That said, the Cal CCA folks have also been reaching out to San Diego area folks, because one of the committees that is considering this bill is Ben Hueso's committee. So he's local, obviously, and then in addition, we have I think the benefit of having Tony Atkins here in our vicinity too, who's obviously a very important legislative player. So there is a lobbyist who's been getting engaged on this, but I also understand that Cal CCA has asked for some assistance from San Diego area folks.
All right, Board Member Acosta.
Yes, I was going to ask something similar. I was going to ask, how can we weigh in? I know that the City of Carlsbad sent a support letter to Assemblymember Portantino for his bill, and we wanted to make sure that others were aware that they could do the same. I also saw it was on the League of California Cities kind of short list of hot bills. So this is like in their top 12 bills that they're supporting. So I wanted to see what other ways we might be able to help weigh in, maybe send a letter or something.
Yeah, those are certainly good steps that have been taken already. I think it's getting the having the member cities on the record with respect to the bill, obviously, sends a very clear message. I think that the most recent outreach effort that I'm aware of, concerned Ben Weso and his office and reaching out to folks there. So that's the most important step, I think, at this point. And Cal CCA may have some additional information about other legislators that they're targeting, and reaching out to them, and that, you know, those folks may or may not be in the districts that we are operating in. But nevertheless, they may have some more information about that campaign. As you know, these things move fairly quickly. And so I think we might be worth checking back in with them to see what their needs are at this point. But I very much appreciate the question. I think it's worth, certainly worth pushing for a resolution on these issues. It's been, we've been working very diligently for a long time trying to get some relief on the PCIA, and then we finally have some legislation in front of us after quite a few years. So certainly something to prioritize.
Yeah, and if I can add, Clean Energy Alliance also sent a letter of support. This is consistent with our adopted policy platform. And so we did send a letter of support as well. So Clean Energy Alliance is on the record.
All right. Any further questions about the PCIA issues? We have, dueling versions of this proposal going forward, so we'll wait and see how it comes out. Moving along, Ms. Boswell, if you'd advance the slides, there's another proceeding that just started that I wanted to make you all aware of, and it is called the Provider of Last Resort, or POLAR proceeding, as the acronym is used. Provider of last resort is a concept that is not new, although it's somewhat new to the energy industry in California. It's a concept that's used in the telecom industry, for example, and in the way it's been defined here is as an energy provider who can provide service when another provider has failed in that particular territory. So the Public Utilities Commission is establishing rules around providers who can act as a fail-safe in the event another provider fails, so as not to disrupt the continuity of electrical service. And so the commission has launched this proceeding pursuant to Senate Bill 520, which provides a definition of a provider of last resort and designates the investor-owned utilities, PG&E, Edison, and SDG&E as the pollers in their territories. There has been interest in the CCA program community to serve in this role, and so we are again working with Cal CCA on this particular proceeding. This proceeding has some salience and particular significance, I'll say, here in San Diego because of SDG&E's statements about exiting the generation business. And we have heard multiple times that SDG&E at some point in the future is planning to exit generation and become a transmission and distribution service provider. We have not seen very many concrete steps taken in that direction, but if that were to occur, CCA programs in the SDG&E territory like CEA and SDCP may be confronted with a situation where they may be asked to serve as the poller, or they may have a strong interest in serving as the poller. Should SDG&E seek to exit. So this proceeding does have some importance here. Ms. Boswell, if you'd advance the slides, I'd appreciate it. The first phase of the proceeding is going to look primarily at the rules for investor-owned utilities, and so they're going to look at the procurement requirements, how the costs should be allocated and recovered, and different options available to make sure that the policy goals of the state with respect to emissions are achieved in the event there's a failure of a program or another. So we have been working with Cal CCA, as I mentioned, and there are comments on this order instituting rulemaking as the first stage of the process. There are comments due next week on those, and we're assisting a little bit with those in terms of the Cal CCA comments. And then the next phase is going to be the more important phase for CCA programs, and that is going to be the non-IOU LLC phase, where the commission structures rules for non-utilities like CCA programs. So we will report back about that as well. And then Ms. Boswell, I think I have one more slide here. I also just wanted to mention that the Commission's been very concerned about reliability. We certainly had some issues here in California last summer, as everybody knows, and this is a multi-pronged effort. But I did want to let everybody know that the Commission asked CCA programs to adopt a critical peak pricing program, which is a rate-based approach to reducing demand during peak periods, and includes high rates for extremely high rates during those peak demand periods. It's a voluntary program, and there was a workshop that was held on it. We looked into this, and we had some discussions with SDG&E, and it became clear that at least for this summer 2021, that SDG&E was unable to provide the data that was needed in the timely manner that was needed to adopt a program like this. So CEA and many other CCA programs are unable to adopt this type of program now. And there's I think a lot of programs are reviewing what are called their demand response programs, or thinking about launching one. So I just wanted to pass that on, that's a discussion that's being held right now. And the Commission seems very eager to get these types of programs adopted. They have instructed the utilities to do various things to improve their programs. But they were also interested in seeing CCA programs adopt them. So at some point in time, it may make sense to revisit the demand response question, perhaps before next summer. So I wanted to mention that as well. That's all I had to, unless anybody has any questions. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. It looks like Board Member Warden has a question.
Yes, one back on the provider of last resort. Do they define what a quote failure is? I mean, we had one IOU that already went into bankruptcy, and what do they mean by failure?
That is a great question, Mr. Warden, and I was a little bit frustrated that SB 520 did not provide a definition of a failed program. So that is one thing that I have raised with Cal CCA. I would hope that this proceeding would help to answer that question, because I can certainly envision a situation where, many of us see and feel the effects of a failed provider, and that provider does not perceive itself as having failed. And you bring up the example of PG&E. Obviously, they declared bankruptcy, and they did not send their customers off to other providers, and there was no mass exodus from PG&E service. They were able to maintain service through a bankruptcy. You would think that a bankruptcy would be the type of thing that would lead to a quote unquote failure, at least as envisioned under the law. But I don't, that the law wasn't passed at the time they declared bankruptcy, but I don't think that's what they envisioned. So excellent question, and stay tuned on that one.
All right, thank you very much for that update. I really think it's important. We learn a lot, but the public, I think, also learns with us. So it's really important to get those updates every time. So thank you so much for that. And we turn to item number 3, and I'll turn that back to Madam CEO.
Thank you, Chair Becker. The next item on the agenda, item number 3, is to provide an update on actions taken by the County of San Diego's Board of Supervisors at their last meeting, April the 6th. And I will share my screen for presentation purposes. Okay. So the recommendation for the board is to receive the update regarding the County of San Diego's efforts to evaluate community choice aggregation options, and then to direct the interim CEO to work with our general counsel Stepanisic to prepare a letter in response to a letter received from the county dated April the 18th, and bring that letter to the board for at its next meeting, May 27th, for approval. At its April 6th meeting, the Board of Supervisors took two actions. One is they adopted guiding principles that are related to their evaluation process of bringing community choice aggregation or community choice energy to the county area. They directed county staff to engage in discussions with both Clean Energy Alliance and San Diego Community Power staff, and to return to the Board of Supervisors in August with options for potential county participation in the two CCE programs. The guiding principles adopted by the Board of Supervisors include prioritize social equity and environmental stewardship, to provide cost competitiveness compared to the incumbent utility, to achieve 100% renewable electricity by 2030, encourage within county build out of renewable energy, battery storage, and energy efficiency programs, and prioritize Category 1 renewable energy. It also includes support requirements for prevailing wages as defined in California Labor Code Section 1770 et seq, and skilled and trained workforce as defined in California Public Contract Code Section 2601 for CCE owned generation, feed-in tariff, and energy efficiency projects. And the last two guiding principles are encouraging the development of equitable jobs pipeline for individuals from communities of concern, the use of bid evaluation policy, prioritizing the selection of new local renewable energy and storage projects, and the workforce development criteria, prioritizing the use of state certified apprenticeship and proper assignment of work to crafts that traditionally perform the work as permitted by applicable law. And lastly, to limit general fund liability. In a letter we received dated April 18th, 2021 from the county, the county requests information from Clean Energy Alliance regarding the Board of Supervisors' consideration of how best to effectuate the guiding principles. So in essence, how do our policies and procedures that we have in place align with their guiding principles? In addition, they directed staff to engage discussion with county staff and also asked specific questions. Those questions that they are asking us to respond to in their letter include how CEA's rates compare to SDG&E's rates, whether there would be any membership fee to charged, if any, what current or anticipated payment obligations there are from the JPA members, what liabilities the county may incur by joining CEA, whether we would have different rates for new members versus the current members, to outline the process to join and related deadlines, how we envision rolling out of CCE in 2023. In 2023 is this earliest that the county could join, or that we could be serving customers in the county territory, assuming an amended implementation plan is filed by the end of the year. They've also asked that we provide information on the role of county staff and then a recent pro forma. Our JPA document does address the addition of parties, and the direction in our JPA indicates that any public agency authorized to be a community choice aggregation that's located in SDG&E territory may apply to become a member of CEA. It requires a 2/3 vote of the entire CEA board to authorize membership of the prospective new member. It would require payment of a membership fee, if any, as may be required by the board to cover CEA costs incurred in connection with adding the new party, and then satisfaction of any other conditions established by the board. So the board does seem to have very broad discretion with regards to evaluating new members. Some policy consideration for the CEA board with regards to not only the county membership, but potentially other agencies that may be reaching out. I have heard from the city of Oceanside, who is renewing its efforts to take a look at its options with regards to CEA, or CCA, I should say, including joining CEA. So policies for consideration include the question of a membership fee. The costs that CEA would incur related to bringing in new members include the consulting firm to evaluate the impact of the additional member, as well as developing the implementation plan amendment that is required by the PUC. I have that work would be performed by Pacific Energy Advisors, and they have indicated that they could do that work at an estimated not to exceed amount of $30,000. They also indicated that if there were several agencies interested in joining, and if those agencies were aggregated to be evaluated all at one time as one group, that not to exceed amount would remain. However, if we wanted individual analysis for each agency separately, then of course the fee would be a new not to exceed amount for each one, because the work then is duplicated for each of those entities. CEA would also incur costs of implementation, such as noticing. That cost we're not able to estimate until we have completed the first step, which is evaluating the impact of the additional member. You might recall that when we formed Clean Energy Alliance, each of the 3 founding members did contribute $150,000 to our startup, and that assisted with the initial costs of funding our budget for consultants and legal services. We then went out for a loan to receive a line of credit, and we did receive that from JP Morgan, and that line of credit then providing the funding for the noticing, as well as our cash flow needs. So it may be possible that through the evaluation process that it would make sense to do that with any new membership, but of course that's a policy decision of the board. I did reach out to other JPAs to see how they address the question of whether or not they charge a prospective new agency for any of the upfront work related to membership in the JPA. And of those that responded, there was only one that charged a fee, and they did charge a small fee. It was about $6,000. Related to membership. All others considered it a cost of their doing business and did not pass those costs on to the new agencies. But those again are also more established JPAs who've been in the business for a little bit longer. The board would also may want to consider conditions of approval. In our JPA document, there was a language in the JPA document related to the evaluation of new members prior to October 2020. And one of those criteria spoke to the risk or financial burden to CEA that the board may consider that in whether or not they would bring on a new member. And that may be a criteria that the board may want to utilize in evaluating new members that are being considered at this point in time. You may want to consider the impact the addition may have on achieving climate action plan goals of each of the current cities, or other conditions that may be identified by the board. There I am. There we go. With regards to timeline, as I mentioned, the adding a new city or new agency to Clean Energy Alliance does require an amended implementation plan, which needs to be filed with the California Public Utilities Commission by January 1, 2022 for a 2023 launch. So no later than August 1st, we would really be looking to the county to hear from the county of their interest in joining CEA. And that's to ensure that there's sufficient time to do the work related to that amended implementation plan. We'd want to receive the historical usage data, the electricity usage information for the county, in order to prepare an analysis of the impact. We would, in essence, use our pro forma assumptions that we use for our rate setting and for monitoring our financial forecast, plug in the county's data and see what that impact is to our pro forma. In September, we would bring those results back to the CEA board, as well as report back to the county on the results of that analysis. By October, we would be looking to the county to adopt a resolution to join Clean Energy Alliance, and then for the CEA board to vote whether or not to add or authorize the addition of the county to CEA. We would develop the amended implementation plan then during the month of November and bring it to the CEA board for approval in December, and then subsequent filing with the CPUC. And that does conclude my presentation. Chair Becker, would you like me to leave it up for any of the bullet points?
That would be great. I have one question on the last slide that you said no later than August 1st, we need to hear from the county, but didn't I read in their letter to us that they're not meeting until sometime in August about this?
Their direction to staff was to bring back the results of their evaluation in August. In speaking to county staff, they are targeting, they've asked that our response be to them by June 1st, and that they are targeting to return to the board in July.
Oh.
Of course, if it's, if they get back to us in early August, we're going to work with that timing. But the later in August it gets, I think the more challenging it gets to meet, all of the required steps. And so this, of course, this timeline is what we would see as our, what we would be looking towards, and would then work with the county to try and get as close to this timeline as possible.
It would probably be important to let the new members that in on that information as to what the timeline, why it's so tight, and why
Yeah.
we get that information. So, okay. And I see board member Warden, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I think this is good news. I know the three of us, we have enough load to be feasible. We figured that out, but it would be nice to have some more. I think it would benefit our rates in a variety of ways. So I'm encouraged by that. And a couple of questions. Barbara, number one, do you know approximately, I don't need an exact number, how much load does the unincorporated county have? What would they bring our way if they joined us?
I have had no information or visibility to their usage data on board member Warden to be able to answer that.
Okay, fair enough. I assume it would be significant addition to our existing load.
That would be my assumption as well. But I have no basis of any factual information, but yes, I would assume the same.
Okay, second question, and this may be a little off the reservation, but is there any requirement that the county join just one CCA? For example, if they were inclined to take Whispering Palms, Rancho Santa Fe, Fallbrook, the North Carolina areas, and join us, and take Julian and Borrego Springs and Otay Mesa and join San Diego Community Power, can they do that? Is that an option for them?
That would not be an option. The Public Utilities Code requires that the entire territory of the governing body, so all of the unincorporated area that the Board of Supervisors controls, would be in one CCA.
Okay, so much for that idea. And the reason I was going there is when we started Clean Energy Alliance, we identified a basic community of interest in the objectives and the reasons we were doing this. And we were all kind of in the same climate zone and air conditioner needs and this and that. So I think we would want to take a look at how the county might change that and whether they line up not just in terms of helping us in terms of spreading fixed costs across a bigger base, but in terms of climate goals and our ideas for microgrids and subsidy programs and all of that to make sure that they would be compatible with us. I think they would, but I would like to see that. Same for Oceanside. All righty. The last question I had is, have they done the feasibility study already, the county?
I know that they have been involved in feasibility studies. I don't know that they've done an update. There really wouldn't be a necessity for a prospective member to do an independent feasibility study because in order for us to make our determination, we really need to have our consultants based on our real life data, our costs, our energy costs to be used in the evaluation criteria. And their consultant would be using a different set of assumptions. And so we would need to put that through our process.
Okay, and then am I right? The implementation plan update, that would be us, since that's CEA's implementation plan. We would take on the task of updating that, not the county.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you. So I guess I'm ready to make a few comments too. I really believe that we need to have a consistent policy on how we handle the new members. So it would be my vote that we come back with a policy on this and sort of get this in writing so that we can treat everyone equally. I don't want that to hinder, obviously, our response to the county because, you know, we're all thrilled to welcome them aboard. So I don't want that to be in the way, but I do think for the future, it would be really good to have a policy on this. And I think that we can turn to, how about board members? Can we put that slide up where you wanted some direction or some guidance? Yeah, as to the membership fee. So for me, the $150,000 that each city paid, that's going to be returned to us within the next 3 years, which is going to be around 2023. So in my mind, there's no need to charge that for a new member. But I'm open to discussion on whether everybody else feels that the $30,000 that we would expend exploring the new member, whether or not we would want to charge them. And maybe it would be something that would be, if they decided to join us, the new members, then we would just absorb that cost. But if they decided on their side that they wanted to go elsewhere, then maybe I think that it's kind of reasonable to charge them for the time that it took us. And again, I only say that because we're a small CCA, and like you said, the more established JPAs, they've been doing this for a while, and so they've got some reserves and they know what they're doing, and so they might not charge a fee. But I think in our initial being so new at this, that we might that might be something we might want to talk about. And I mean, the best scenario would be that if a few cities decided in the beginning to explore joining us, like Oceanside, San Clemente, and the county, let's say, and so then they could all split the cost. I don't know, but I'm open to talking about that. Yeah, and I think we do need to look at whether or not for the conditions of approval, as Board Member Warden was saying, we've got to make sure that our climate action plan goals are in line, and I already know they are with the county, their climate action plan. So the new climate action plan, I assume. So I would like to look at those things, and maybe that's something that could be in our policies as well. So those are my initial comments, and I'd be happy to hear from the other two members. Yes, Board Member Costa.
Thank you. I also am a little concerned about the $30,000 evaluation cost. And I do also agree that it would be ideal to split that cost amongst several members that are considering, potential members that are considering joining us. I wonder if there's a way to do some kind of more, create more of a template, something that we can use so that even though we're investing, money up front for this kind of evaluation for new potential members, we could use that same template for others as they come to us. And that way we save a little bit on cost and we just kind of plug in their data for each potential new member. Just thinking of ways to curb our costs because we are small, but we don't want to turn folks away by charging, especially if that's not the regular practice. I'm not sure how many other CCAs you surveyed. You just said you surveyed some and only one charged a fee of about $6,000, I think is what you said. So I'd like to be in line with what other CCAs do and not try to charge them the full amount if that's something nobody else ever does, and that it might turn them away. So those are my thoughts on that. And I do think that we need to proceed kind of in a parallel track, figuring out how to have a standardization of the way that we evaluate new potential members and give them a cost estimate. But at the same time, I don't want to slow down on this one. It looks like we have a tight timeline in order to meet that December deadline. So that just means we work quickly and efficiently, and that we're able to prepare that evaluation as we decide today how we'd like to do that.
Thank you for that. Board Member Warden.
Yeah, I find myself in agreement with you, Chair Becker. I think we should have our own, in effect, set of guiding principles that we use to evaluate new members. The county put out in a very readable, sensible way what their guiding principles are, what they're looking for. We can do the same. I'm pretty comfortable we're going to align well with the county. We need to keep in mind, however, that we are also, to some extent at least, competing with San Diego Community Power. And what we offer to the county has to be competitive if we want to be a contender for that. And I noted San Diego Community Power, I think, Barbara, correct me if I'm wrong, has rate setting on their agenda for June. I'm assuming their rates will be similar to ours since they're buying power in the same marketplace that we are. But how our rates compare with theirs will matter. And so will any upfront fees that we charge. And so I think I'm in agreement with Board Member Acosta and with you, Chair Becker. If we spend $30,000 to evaluate somebody and they decide at the end of the line they don't want to join us, I think they should cover that cost. But if they do join, that they should get it back. I'm perfectly comfortable with that. Their question about split rates, I don't think we're thinking or talking about that. So right off the bat, I'm comfortable to say that all of our customers would pay the same rates. There wouldn't be a second set of rates for new people who join. So those are my thoughts. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for that. All right, not sure that we provided enough direction for you, Madam CEO, but what do you think?
I'm making sure I'm not muted. I think it would be consistent with how the initial founding members were treated, in that it may be a good approach to have the prospective members pay their share of the upfront cost, but be reimbursed once the CEA has launched and into their territories, and that they can then be paid back, similar to how we're reimbursing the initial $150,000 loans back to the current agencies. So that may be something the board may want to consider.
Are you saying, can I just interrupt you one? You're not saying the $150,000, it would just be their cost would be the $30,000.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And so that would address, Chair Becker, your concern about CEA incurring costs, and then, the potential of the agency not following through and changing their mind down the road and not moving forward with the implementation.
Very good. I think we're all in agreement on that.
So yeah, I think I have sufficient information with which to draft a letter. I would like to maybe put General Counsel Stepanisic, since I'll be working with him, to see if there's anything he thinks that direction we may need.
No, I think we're good for right now. I think maybe our best bet now is to draft up a letter in draft form and bring it back to the board at your next meeting. Then we can finalize it.
Great. And what are your feelings on as far as a policy? And I don't want to rush you guys. I'm not saying bring a policy back by next meeting, but I think it's something to think about.
Oh yeah, once I think we have, the board has decided upon the form of the letter back to the county, I think that's going to establish really the main parameters of the policy. So
Okay.
yeah, it would not be difficult to come back to you at either the next meeting or one after that with the policy.
Sounds great. Okay. All right. So I think that that's enough direction. And we will move on to item number 4. Madam CEO, take that one away too.
Thank you, Chair Becker. It's actually our Madam Treasurer, Marie Bercuti, who will be presenting on item 4. So I will turn the, I'll be steering, but she'll be presenting.
Yes,
Welcome,
thank you.
Marie. Hello.
Hi. So this item is regarding an increase in the contract for Bayshore for fiscal year 2021 and an extension through fiscal year 21-22 for consulting services, for the Chief Executive Officer and the Interim Board Clerk services. So it's going from 2021 an amount not to exceed $156,000 from the original amount of $118,000 and extend through June 30th, 2022 for an amount not to exceed $185,700. Next slide, please. So in fiscal year 2021, the services that are provided by Bayshore are the interim CEO and the interim board clerk, which was added at the September 17th, 2020 board meeting. The interim CEO portion was based on an estimated 55 hours per month when it was initially the contract was initially drawn up. But since July 2020, the average hours per month have increased from the original estimate of 55 hours to 60 hours and now up to 75 hours per month. And it's estimated that the average hours per month will remain at 75 hours through June 2021. So those increased hours are going to result in the total interim CEO services cost to increase from $100,000 to $122,000, or an increase of $22,000 for the fiscal year 21-22. The interim board clerk services were based on an estimated 30 hours per month when the contract was initially drawn up. But since October 2020, the average hours have increased to 40 hours and are now increased again to 65 hours per month. That was due to additional work that was related to higher than anticipated time spent on records management and managing FPP filings. So it's estimated that the average hours per month will remain at 65 hours per month through June 2020 for the interim board clerk, resulting in an increased cost from $18,000 to $33,410, or an increase of $15,410 for the fiscal year 21-22. And the combined increase for both the interim CEO and the interim board clerk is $37,410. And funds are available in the adopted fiscal year 2021 budget to accommodate these increased costs. Next slide, please. So the CEA board authorized back in January extension of existing consulting services agreements for fiscal year 21-22. And that would include Bayshore, which provides services for the interim CEO and the interim board clerk. So it is estimated that the hours for the interim CEO will be 75 hours per month, billed at $150 per hour, or a total of $135,000. And for the interim board clerk, an estimated 65 hours at $65 per hour or $50,700. And these hours should be enough to reflect the CEA launch and begin serving customers. And these amounts are also within the estimated amounts of the pro forma that has been previously provided to the board. And I'm available for questions or for the presentation. That concludes my presentation for this item.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions or comments on this item? Yes, Board Member Warden.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. I've been very pleased with Bayshore and with Barbara and with Susan. I've been working with them from the beginning, and I think they're doing us great service, and I'm totally comfortable with the recommendations.
Thank you. Is that a motion?
Yes, if you want it to be, move approval.
Board Member Costa.
Great. I don't know if you heard me say second also. I just have a comment, and it's that I'm an entrepreneur and a small business owner. I know how sometimes we underestimate with a startup how much work and energy and time and blood, sweat, and tears go into a startup. And I completely understand working much more than was expected and needing to be compensated for that. So thank you for your hard work.
I will echo those comments. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, could you call for the vote?
Member Warden,
Yes.
Member
Yes.
Becker.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that item is approved. We're on to item number 5, approve extension of consulting services agreements. Would this be Ms. Bercuti as well?
I will take on the balance of the agreement.
Okay.
The balance here. So our last item is related to approval of extensions of the other existing consulting services agreements through fiscal year 21-22. And the recommendation is to approve the extension of consulting services agreement and authorize the interim CEO to execute the related document subject to general counsel approval. As our Madam Treasurer mentioned at a previous meeting, the board did direct the extension of the existing consulting services agreements through fiscal year 21-22. I have reached out to our team of consultants and received their updated not to exceed amounts for the coming fiscal year. And for the most part, they are the same as what they were in the current fiscal year. These services include our legal team, composed of RWG Law for our general counsel services, Tosdal APC for regulatory and special counsel, Hall Energy Law for our special energy transactions attorney, and our newest addition, Keys and Fox, who assists us with our PUC proceedings and helps us in our constant diligent process of monitoring SDG&E's rates and PCIA. We also have our contract for technical consulting with Pacific Energy Advisors. And Pacific Energy Advisors does actually have 2 agreements with Clean Energy Alliance. The first agreement was the initial scope that included the initial work related to our RPS procurement plans, integrated resource plan filing, resource adequacy work. There was a second scope of services and RFP process that went out that added the additional work related to managing our portfolio, our conventional energy purchases, and short-term renewable energy. Now, Pacific Energy Advisors was awarded that second work. The second agreement had a term through June 30, 2023. And my recommendation is that we extend the first agreement to have the same term through June 30, 2023, because the work that they're doing really is closely tied in tandem, and it provides stability with regards to that work. It really is intertwined, and it just makes sense to extend that one through June 30, 2023. And then last but certainly not least is our interim treasurer and Chief Financial Officer Marie Bercuti, who is, we're proposing to extend her services also through June 30, 2022. And all other terms with regards to these agreements would remain the same, with the exception of the not to exceed amounts and the terms. And the not to exceed amounts are consistent with estimates that are in the pro forma, and the pro forma that was used in developing our rates. So our rates as currently set would generate sufficient revenue to cover the costs of these extensions. And that does conclude my presentation. I'm happy to answer whatever questions Chair Becker or the board members may have.
Great. Any comments? I think I saw, I don't know, board member Warden.
Thank you. I'm in support of all of these. I understand it. It's the right thing to do. The question I have is, we've been in startup phase and we still are, but at some point we're going to kind of transition from that to an operating phase. Will there come a point in time when we should be looking at whether some of these services should be brought in-house and done by staff in-house more efficiently than through consultants? Is that in our future at some point, do you think?
Thank you, Board Member Warden. Yes, the plan for 21-22 is to develop a staffing plan. Once we have, when the board was considering whether they wanted to hire full-time staff for the coming fiscal year or continue with the current structure of relying on consulting services, we hadn't yet launched, and we didn't know what our opt-outs would be and what our true revenue stream would be. Once we're through this phase and we are at a stable state with our customer base, then we'll develop a staffing plan and can bring forward to the board that plan for transitioning to a full-time staff, and look at, renting office space if the board so desires to establish a permanent location, and that sort of those sorts of decisions.
All right, thank you for the answer.
All right. Okay, I'll go ahead and move approval of staff recommendations.
I'll second.
Great. Can we call for the vote?
Member Warden,
Yes.
Member Acosta,
Yes.
Chair Becker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, we are on to board member requests for future agenda items. Anything other than the policy on new members? All right, I see board member Acosta reaching. Are you reaching for a hand or no? Nope, you're just moving around. Okay, great. Well, I think that's it. Then our next meeting is May 27th, 2021 at 2 p.m. hosted virtually by Solana Beach, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.